Welcome to Cosmic Conversations. You are tapping in to the root of the symmetry and tuning in to the mind of Mercury to listen to the thoughts of your trippy, Trip C, psychedelic psychopomp, the Triple C, Chase Clarence Calloway. Today's episode, despite my calm demeanor and my relaxed body right now, I've had a whole full day and I'm actually recording this at 3:33 a.m. was what it was when I last looked. Today's episode, we're talking about fire. I've gotten a good amount of questions about fire and just people wanting me to explain fire more and explain a little more about why fire is not natural, as in fire is obviously natural, but why fire is not the grounding basis for reality. Like, why is life water-based, not fire-based? Why do I generally say that fire is about separation? So this is me responding to those questions that want me to elaborate more on what fire actually means on a spiritual level. There's many ways we can go with this, but let's just start with the top down. The point is that fire is the first light that space uses to express itself. The first light. So, because fire is the first light that a space uses to express itself, it is also then the most individual. So, this is where now we can relate it to your fire. Your fire is your imagination. So your imagination is too individual for any universe outside of yourself. Point blank, simple. Like my imagination as Tahuti Hermes Trismegistus, too individual for any universe outside of myself. That's why I have to create my own soul that I can then build universes out of. And now I'm connected to the universe in that way because I actually expanded the universe by going inward. That's why white people call black people the N-word, because we create simulations by going inward. So that's water then. Water is that element that's more about staying still, whereas fire goes out. So a spirit who's in their fire element, they're focused hard on projecting. Spirits in their water elements, they're reflective. So fire is the element that is always there to remind you that everything is individual. So this is where we can think about only the space creating this fire can touch it without getting burned. Only you as a spirit can touch your ego without getting burned. Your ego, your imagination, your idea of God is literally too individual for anyone outside of your spirit. This is why you then use your ability to connect with your ego to create a soul. So now that you have a soul, you have water, and that water allows you to connect with other spirits who have also connected with themselves. So now, because we all have souls, we're all water-based beings. And this is why the universe is one big soul pool, one big soul group of spirits who are just bringing their souls into one collective. And then we're all finding the connections inside of this big chaotic web of connections. Because if we're going to find spirits outside of ourselves, we have to get connected to structures outside of ourselves. So the one big metaphysical structure that connects all spaces in the universe is the universe, because the universe is always going to be a reflection of your internal universe, which is your water. You can only connect with others as far as you've connected with yourself. You feel me? So, and I mean, yeah, you do, because this is all of life. This is everything. Like, if someone else doesn't have the emotional intelligence of going through similar circumstances as you, then they can't really empathize with you, can they? So that's the whole point of water. Water is about the problem. So all of us as spirits, we create similar problems. Like a problem for most people is dealing with money. Boom. So now that's a problem that spirits can relate on. And then that's a problem that allows spirits to communicate their way to greater forms of stability. Whereas if they never went through that problem, they perhaps never would have connected in such a stable way. This is why money is technically all about making sense of connections on a spiritual level. There's actually no point, especially when you're talking to Tahuti, when you're talking to someone deep in their earth element, there's no point in connecting with others or building a relationship if you're not actually creating a structure out of that that brings value to the universe. And that to me is symmetry. That's the idea of nature. That's the whole point of a tree is growing whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter how you feel about that tree. That tree is growing and it's producing fruits that go way harder than anything you can even imagine, let alone create. And that's that tree bringing its imagination into the universe in a way that makes sense. And that's the point of then all this sacred geometry, everything I talk about as Metatron with the Merkaba, and how spirits use shapes and numbers and elements to construct these conscious bodies that allow them to fly through the astral realm and build families and feel like they're connecting and understanding of one another. So the big thing in this simulation, clearly with the slaughter and genocide and Christian rationalization of the systemic enslavement of indigenous peoples, the big issue here is fire. Spirits are lost in projection. The only reason racism is a thing, the only reason I as an indigenous man have been educated and taught to call myself black, to call myself black, to say that I'm lacking, is because white people, Europeans, forcefully projected into North America, South America, Central America, the Americas, forcefully projected and used the indigenous peoples. They saw how the indigenous peoples were super productive, super earth, super collectively friendly and loving. And they're like, wow, we can use this. So they were in their fire element. It only works through water. So this is why you have to kill kids with kindness. Check out Dissect the Dialect. That's about that letter K being number 11. If you want to kill people, you have to look like you're their friend. Like that's the whole point of Southern hospitality and Christian energy in general, being like, hey, we're here to save you guys. You need to sacrifice yourself to Jesus or else you're going to go to hell. Like that's the ultimate made up projection. The indigenous peoples are like, yo, we're in heaven right now. And it's only started to become hell since you came into our land and started spouting this gibberish at us that we barely even understand, but your body language is gross. The way you conduct business with each other is gross. Like Europeans hated each other. They were fighting each other. Fire fights itself. You see this? You see how this fire is just like, it's constant fight dance. Just, fire is fighting. All right, that's like what angels look like, just going to war constantly. Like it's just constant projection of one's imagination, just constant light being put out. So hot, like infinite transformation, all to express whatever individual spirit is creating that fire. So fire is all about pure projection and how pure projection is transforming circumstances into nothing. So if this fire had its way, technically, in how it was able to spread, because fire desires to spread infinitely. That's why our ego is fire, the ego, the fire desires to spread infinitely, to grow forever, to expand outward forever. But that desire is consumptive. This is why fire has to learn how to be water if it wants to actually create. And now we get air. Fire can't exist if it doesn't have an atmosphere to be inside of. So literally, fire does not exist until it combines with water to create the airy atmosphere that allows it to transform in such a hot way that it can express itself for us to build a relationship with it. Because this fire, like I was saying, if it had its way, would spread throughout this whole house and burn everything down, and honestly burn the whole world down. That's what white supremacist mentality is all about. The mentality that rationalizes the genocide and slavery of indigenous peoples. It's all about fire. It's all about just infinitely projecting out ideas that allow you to rationalize how you transform circumstances outside of yourself into something that is harmful. Fire hurts. Fire is harmful. This is why you won't see fire-based simulations. It's just not possible. Like, it's literally, it's impossible. It's impossible. The whole idea of fire is that it is your individuality outside of water. So your fire is who you are when you're completely alone in yourself. This is why I talk about with spiders being 8-dimensional beings and hermeticism and the importance of loving being alone. Because your fire is your ability to actually be alone in your imagination. No one can step through your fire and touch you. Like when you're in your pure imagination, people get burned up. People get transformed into it. That's Leo energy. So it's truly all about how fire, when it's projecting, when a spirit is projecting out its idea of life, it's infinitely unrelatable. So this is what water is about. A spirit has to learn how to relate with its own ego. If a spirit can't even connect with itself, and it instead just wants to project its problems outward, this is where we literally get white supremacy. We get America acting like everything is a God-given plan, and they're not responsible for all the genocide and slavery that they actively profit off of. Like, that's what fire is. This is what the white supremacy is all about. It's all about just saying, oh, I'm not responsible for my actions, so let me just do what I want and enjoy that because I'm not responsible. Like, it's like ultimate projection on the highest magnitude. Like a light white supremacist type person who's saying that everything is one God, they're not in their water element at all. They're not connecting or reflecting their own ego to realize that they actually are alone. So fire, in its desire to like expand very hard, does not realize that it's alone. Like, that's everyone who thinks that they were created by something outside of themselves does not realize that they're alone. And they have to always be alone to even create the opportunity to connect with something outside themselves. So it's like you're just getting lost in not wanting to be connected with yourself. So you're like super in your fire element of projecting out how everything is one God, or everything is a God, but it's not you. So now you can feel like you're relating with everyone because your fire can only exist inside of water, but you're bringing so much fire in, you can't even relate with people in their actual spiritual level. Like, you can only project onto someone, you're an extension of my God, and if you don't accept that, then I hate you. Like, that's literally how I've been raised my whole life. That's all of Christianity. That's everything that has rationalized the genocide of indigenous peoples. That's everything involving Jesus and all of that. Like, it's insane. So this is what fire is about. And this is why climate change is a thing. In simulations, when spirits are projecting too much of their fire into the natural water cycle, they create a lot of issues. They create a lot of problems. A lot of problems. a lot, like just a lot of problems. Like obviously you have to project your problem. Like that's what racism is. Like the moment you're like, oh, that person's stupider than me because their skin is darker. That's so much projection that you just made up. Also, you can transform the environment to show us how stupid you truly are. So this is just a quick cosmic conversation on, yeah, why fire is individual. Because your imagination, too big for this simulation, too big for any universe. You have to create a universe, you have to create a soul to channel your imagination inside of so it even makes sense. And then that's the point of communication. If you can't communicate your imagination into physical reality, it doesn't make sense and you're not going to be able to connect with others. And the whole point of you really expressing yourself was that you wanted to connect with others. It's just that you had to project your idea first. So you have to have an idea of who you are before you can even connect with other spirits who are in resonance with that idea of you and have an idea of themselves. So it's a constant evolution cycle that we're all using light to do forever and ever and ever. Much love. Peace out.